back to another episode of the ADHDads. I'm your host, CJ.
And I'm JJ.
And I'm JJ. How you doing this week, brother?
I'm doing all right. Still moving into our new place here and getting settled in. We changed a custodial schedule to week on, week off, and that
How's that
means
working for
that.
you? Are you liking that better than half week, half week?
Well, tell you, if for any of our co-parents out there, one of the tough things about custodial schedule changes is saying goodbye to your kiddo and knowing you're not going to see him for a while.
Yeah.
So I said goodbye to him this morning. His friend came and met him at the school, right outside the school, and gave him a hug, and he was off playing with his friend. And then I said to myself, I won't see him for a week. This is tough. So that's going to be the hard thing. But I guess the one thing I could say too, and in positive response to that, is that I am keeping busy. I have I can finally put our apartment together, and instead of having pictures like all in a row on the floor, they can go up on the wall, and I get settled in and make it feel more like home, and I get to go on my date, so that's pretty cool too. Yeah, so we're gonna have some fun tomorrow, watching a movie, cooking together, stuff like that should be sweet. Yeah, so I'll make the best of the situation and not sit there and be too sad. I'll keep busy and happy. How about you? How you doing,
Mm.
brother?
Well, it's kind of interesting that you talk about that because we were going to talk about hitting the reset button today. And it sounds like you're kind of in that process of learning what that looks like in this new scenario here. So maybe it'll work out.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, one in, I guess, insider thing about our lives is that kiddo, his mom took him to a therapist fairly recently and talked about our schedule and how things are going, and there's been some challenge that we have yet to identify the source of it. And there might not be a specific source that we can point to, but the therapist mentioned that week on, week off might be something that would be helpful for him, and he said yeah to that. Like, my son actually voiced the fact that he thinks that'll be fine. So perhaps there'll be something to it, and instead of going into it feeling anxious and sad, I can be a little bit more hopeful. And honestly, one of the big things too, I think you and our listeners with kiddos with neurodiversity could attest to this, is that once you get into a groove of things, some things just become easier. And if we're not constantly going, I shouldn't say constantly, when we're going back and forth between households throughout the week, I think that keeps our kids in a little bit more state of anxiety. Now, I could just be telling
Mhm.
myself that story, but honestly, I believe there's something to that. Like, I wouldn't want to do that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to. I mean, I have a hard enough time sleeping on a different mattress every night, for God's sake, and I'm asking my kiddo to jump, in this bed, and then in a couple days he's going to have to go to that other place where the room temperature's different, and the mattress doesn't bounce the same way when he's bouncing on it, even though we told him not to. And yeah, it just looks different for him, even though they are both places of comfort. They're also a new thing or a transition, and neurodiverse people do not, and a lot of neurotypical people don't like to have inconsistencies. So perhaps this is something that makes a lot of sense, and the therapist was trying to identify that for us and suggest some good options. So I'm hopeful.
That's interesting to hear you say because I remember one of our first episodes, we were talking about this, like what do we kind of each in our individual households think is the not better, but, healthier or, what do we have more inclination to go with when it comes to that child custodial time. And I grew up in a year with my mom, summers with my dad, and every other holiday. And you're questioning how that affected me, and I was kind of in question of like how you see that Cohen's reacting to such like that half a week on, half a week off, and being so consistent with the change. So I guess we'll have to reconvene in another year here and compare the week on, week off to the half a week on, half a week off, and see where you find the little bits of success there, huh?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the big things about my truth and core values is curiosity, and I want to always remain curiosity and empathetic. So one way to do that is to be open minded, and open mindedness means, hey, if something isn't going 100%, or maybe isn't even at 70% smooth, perhaps that means you have to be open to other options. And so yeah, that's kind of my thing. Um, while I might feel comfort and happiness in contentment in this schedule that we've been doing, it could be that my son is acting out at school and having troubles at home getting into homework because he doesn't have the consistent schedule. It's too much this back and forth, and that's causing him anxiety and causing him performance drops. So not saying that's the truth, but it's the open-minded approach, the curiosity part of it that brings possibilities into the picture rather than folded arms and or crossed arms and fear of change.
Yeah, and last week we talked about choosing your hard, and I think it's hard no matter which way we choose, right? Like as a kid growing up in that, only summers with my dad and every other holiday, I definitely craved for a half a week on, half a week off. And but when we talked about it, I was also concerned of maybe like what you're expressing now is like maybe there's a lot of anxiety kind of attached to that of like where is home, what is the rules, which direction is right and which one do I follow where at what time. So I think yeah, it's easy to get involved in a routine like you say, and then to stop thinking about like what the other alternatives, options, or roads of hard are. And I had so much I wanted to say last week during that episode, and my brain just wasn't working. I was dealing with a lot of a week of no sleep. My wife has been having a midlife crisis, so to speak, and having a lot of night terrors because of this medication that she's been on. So we've got that figured out. She's met with a psychiatrist, and we've changed the medication, which seems to be helping drastically, and putting a stop to these night terrors. So I'm finally back on a normal schedule of sleep, JJ. I feel like my ADHD neural pathways are firing in the correct routes that they're supposed to be. So I'm feeling a little bit more with it. And one of the things that we didn't really get to touch on last week was like hitting that restart button. And how do we, like, once we realize like this hard ain't working and I want to choose a different kind of hard, or I want to explore a different type of technique or strategy in the parenting world, how do we do that? How do we hold ourselves accountable? How do we have grace? How do we forgive ourselves? And how do we have an open heart to be curious about trying something new and out of our realm of safety and security? So I kind of want to like make a whole episode on just that today, because I'm like kind of walking through it right now, brother.
Hmm.
Trying to hit that restart on all the chaos that's been going on in our lives for the last couple of months here. So I'm curious to hear from you what restarts look like, and how you manage that in your household.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on the moment, and I appreciate you bringing that up and talking about last week's schedule because I'm gonna bring a question back to you. And this is, what's the difference between choosing your hard and hitting that reset button?
um, for me, the reset button is I there's a step process that I go through. I think that I need to prep my mind and body and emotions for to go into the new hard, because I think a lot of people like say, dang it, this ain't working, I want a new hard, and then they go down a direction with no plan of action, with no like after action review of like maybe what worked and what didn't from the previous hard and the previous set of circumstances and techniques, and how they want to move forward. So often we just say we want the new hard, and then we hop the fence to the greener pastures, and then we don't know how to take care of the lawn like we were talking about. So I kind of like wanted to go through some of the things that I think about and consider, to set myself up and prep my mind to go in a new direction.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the big one for me then too. And maybe we'll just bounce back and forth some strategies here today, because I think that's really important. And sometimes the reset button can be in the moment too, where you're not necessarily trying to map out your decisions for the foreseeable future, but you're just trying to survive the moment, and
Brother,
that can
sometimes I
usually.
have to hit the reset button multiple times a day.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, when I think of hitting the reset button, like in terms of an emotional reset, right? Like, especially that usually means like when something results in somebody losing their cool, there's an outburst. That's kind of what I think about the reset button. There's a lot that goes into that, and I think it starts with the self. It starts with checking your
For sure.
ego. Um, but even still, before that, I think a lot of times, we talk about grace on our podcast a number of times. And I think that's usually the first step. And what does that look like in the first step when you're heated and you're struggling? I think you have to acknowledge and accept your emotions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, don't suppress. Instead, say to yourself, that's a normal human reaction. And then my ego kind of tried to take over and defensiveness came into play. But I got to acknowledge the fact that I had a reaction. And that's part of that's I think that's one of the parts of giving yourself grace. It's not the whole picture, but it's part of it. So, what does it look like to take a step back? You said physically, emotionally, like maybe physically taking a step back, and then being able to say to yourself, um, well, let's label my emotions. I'm feeling frustrated right now. Maybe you start with, I'm angry, and then you're able to take a step back and say, okay, anger is kind of this overall gross term, and that might not be the accurate picture of my feeling in this moment. So I'm really annoyed. My son is so good with his sounds, constantly making all these different sounds, and sometimes I'm just like, I can deal with this, and other times I'm like working on something. Like this morning, before we took him to school, my work starts before his day of school starts, so that means there's a little bit of an overlap where he's at home, and I've got a lot going on in my work. It's very intense right now, and it's going to be for the foreseeable future. So when he's asking me questions, daddy this, daddy that, and he's making sounds, and I'm like, I really gotta focus on this work, like those things annoy me that much faster. And I gotta step back sometimes and say, all right, this is my situation, this isn't gonna change. How can I work with this? What was I feeling? um do I have reason to feel that way? Is it normal for me to feel that way? Yeah. So I don't know, that's my first thought in the process of giving grace, especially when you find yourself heightened and escalated.
Yeah. For me, that's journal entering, brother. Because I have like four steps that I try to be routine about with a restart. And it starts with a journal entry. Getting all the feelings out, and then the second step is reflecting. So kind of going over that and piecing together like what you say here, like what works, what doesn't. Give myself grace, finding the areas that hit a roadblock, finding the ones that have a shortcut or a smooth path. And then my third step is planning, right? Like I have to, what does this new plan of a reset look like, this new hard that I'm choosing? What am I going to do every day? What are the routine things that I'm going to do in the morning or throughout the day to like set myself up for it, to think about it, to like have it in the forefront of my mind? And then, the fourth step is the implementation with grace, of trying to implement it, but realizing that it's not going to be 100% at first, that we have to build up to 100%. I may succeed 10% of the time the first day and then work my way up to 50% by the end of the week. But the more that I think about it, the more grace that I can have. And the more that I think about the strategies of implementing a new behavior, a new way of parenting, a new way of addressing conflict, um, the more that it becomes a routine, a subconscious thing rather than some foreign thing that feels unnatural to me. So yeah, I think, the first step for me is like putting it all out on a page. Some people go out to an empty field and they scream out into the void. Some people cry in the shower. Some people fight with their spouses or have a big blow up. And I'm not saying that I haven't done all of those things too, Definitely have. But the healthiest way I feel is to like sit down with my own thoughts and try to organize them and understand them.
It's funny you mentioned the, needing to get out there and just let it out. There's a comedian, Jim Brewer, who talked about, you remember the good old days with houses where in the middle of like the garage there was that pole, like that support beam, in the middle of the garage. He said when he was really upset to the wife and he had a yell argument, he'd go out to the garage and just start beating that pole with a wrench. And his wife would be like, "What are you doing? You're crazy." He's like, "Just give me a minute." You know, that was his way of kind of getting it out there. And and I wonder because it sounds like you mentioned journaling. I imagine there's and then applying later. I imagine there's other possible things in there, calming activities. Meditation is one of those, which journaling can be that. Physical activity, maybe not beating the pole, but going for a walk or something. And like, how about like just engaging in your senses? Really kind of letting the fullness of yourself engage in something when you've removed yourself from the situation of the challenge, the escalation, the ego driven, the irrational. Just kind of go somewhere and let these pieces of you start to participate in your sensory input, instead of letting just one thing run your mind that's already told you you're out of control here. I can start to bring in like sense, like let's say I or maybe I take a bath and that's my place of calm and chill, where I'm just able to kind of let the body relax. Everything kind of goes with that, as opposed to just constantly getting to that thought and constantly intense and in a state of unease, where you're not then therefore being able to bring yourself grace and also bring the situation grace.
Yeah, man. My outlet lately has been reggae music. With the new Bob Marley movie coming out. Oh, dude, when I first moved out to California, me and my roommates, we listened to so much reggae, and it was just like it was a lifestyle, you know? It was just like peace, love, and harmony and oneness, you know, and I haven't listened to reggae in so long, brother. And the last couple of weeks have been like, it's been so peaceful for me to just like meditate to the voice of Bob Marley and One Love, you know? So I can definitely like, sometimes it's just like a little thing like that, you know? Like one of my favorite things to do to ground me is to just drive in the car and listen to music, you know, and just belt out, dude. I'm that guy at the stoplight just belting out for all the pedestrians. So, you know, that's a very useful technique for me. Also, the gym too. You know, that's a really great place to like go push around some just heavy stuff on the floor of the gym and feel like I'm getting a lot of aggression out. You know,
Mm.
I'm that one guy at Planet Fitness. You know, what do they call them? The clunks. You know, they ring the bell when the guy's like, trying to bench press. That's me.
I want to really kind of just like put this out there, and it's not a statement of judgment, but it'll probably come across as that, not of what you said, but you know, I think one of the things that I hear from a lot of people is like, let's say they are in a state of struggle and they're in this cycle. It's like this thing once again is causing me pain, is causing me frustration. Nothing ever goes, like using absolutes in their argument, and they seem stuck. And then perhaps they are offered a piece of advice to, let's say, maybe, well, what do you think about doing yoga, or what do you think about lifting heavy weights? Oh, lifting heavy weights, that's for jocks and idiots who are trying to prove themselves. Or yoga, that's for weak people, that's not for me and stuff. And they get in this mindset. And I want to ask the question, but it does seem judgmental. It's like, what's the issue with trying something new? Do you
Yeah.
want to continue to commit yourself to this problem that you have once again got yourself caught up in, and let your ego suggest, hey, this, I'd rather sit in my anger and continue to repeat the process? Or do I want to try something new? Well, what about trying something new? Yeah, yoga sounds to you all this time has sounded kind of wacky, but I don't know. Then there's a lot of people who say this yoga is, it's tied to longevity. It's tied to so much like health benefits. What is our situation that is trying to tell us, no, don't do this? Is our situation so good that we want to stick with it, or do we want to try something new? I would love it if anybody out there who's in a cycle of challenge with themselves and is saying no to something because they don't understand it, to maybe show some curiosity toward it.
Mm. Man,
Perhaps it'll help.
yeah, I've definitely fallen victim to that too. Like I'm the least receptive person to new ideas unless I'm ready for it, right? Like I don't want to hear like you should try this when I'm in a moment of like uprise, right? Or when I'm in a moment of panic or anxiety, because that's like the last thing that I want to hear. I want to come up with the idea, you know? And I think that's just like human nature. Like as much as I do want the new thing and I do want a new way of doing it, sometimes when you're suggested it, it feels like an attack or you want to get defensive on it. You know, well, what? I'm not the thing I'm not doing or the thing I'm doing isn't working. I'm just no good. Then you start talking in those absolutes, and that's why my second step of my process is the reflection phase. You know, I got to get it all out there, get it all on page, and then I have to be really curious about like dissecting that and like really like curious about like, oh well, you thought that that was working, but if you read what you just wrote, is it really working, you know? And you can see here that you thought that, you know, you're doing really good here, but you weren't, or you thought that this wasn't working, but now that you've kind of put that on paper and let your mind just run with it, you can see maybe there are some things that you need to dig in deeper with or try in a different angle or, you know, work in a different way. And being that, honestly, I think that's the hardest step for me, at least personally, is that reflection and that openness to like accepting my
Mm,
my my indiscretions or my faults or my hiccups or road bumps along the way, you know,
mm,
because I do
mhm,
want to be defensive, but the moments that I'm able to say like, well, what's really going on there, you know, digging deeper, why, the 5 whys, right? Don't just ask why once but ask it 5 times, and by the time you get to the fifth one you'll really uncover like the deep subconscious nature of that behavior. And that is like the hardest but most important part of this process to me, is like
mhm.
being
The
open with
reflection.
curiosity to that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what are the questions we can ask ourselves when we're reflecting back on the situation? I would think maybe what triggered my reaction. That's probably a big one. Were there any warning signs that I missed? I mean, chances are they're yes for me in every situation. Just be honest with you. And could I have handled it differently? Like all these great questions we can ask ourselves that aren't immediately just a statement of blame against ourselves, but rather an opportunity for us to, evaluate ourselves, evaluate our ability to handle the hard situations, the ego challenges, and pride. Those questions I think are important. I imagine there's plenty others that you've come up with as well, but I think those three for me would really help me to identify the truth of the situation in terms of how I responded.
Yeah, and for me, the more defensive that I feel of reading something or reflecting on a past behavior is a good flag for me. Like this is what needs your attention, you know. So again, when you're in the moment and you're being told by your spouse, you know, don't do that or why are you doing that? Like it's like we this defense raises up in me. But when I can really be intentional about setting that time apart for myself to go into it with myself and just by myself to be able to be curious about those questions and really find the parts where I feel the anxiety rise up of I didn't like the way that that went, I didn't like that conversation, I didn't like how that person said it to me or how I said it to them. Those are the moments that really need the attention and really spark it. And again, it's not always easy to do it in the moment. So when I can
Hmm.
really set aside that time for myself to do that is where I find the most openness to address those things.
Okay, and now I'm gonna take a kind of a not necessarily a like a complete diversion, but a pause to that and ask a more probing question to that process. Back to the grace piece. Um, how do we reflect and not self? destruct. So, my kiddo, I'm still working with him where he says, I'm just so stupid. And it just kills me because that's never the point of my addressing something that was hard, or addressing his behavior when it was unsafe. It's never like, hey, I'm never saying to him, hey, you did this. That was wrong. Clearly, you can't figure things out. I've never said that message to him, but sometimes when we talk about it in the reflection thing, people in general can be just, instead of being productive and growing through it, their quick answer or their quick statement about themselves is very negative and hurtful, and it doesn't actually lead them toward growth because they're committing themselves to the idea that they're incapable when they say that. And worse, they're basically saying they're no good. And, when I think about somebody coming to me with an apology over a situation, I see that as an opportunity for growth and growth in the moment. So, how do we reflect and not self-destruct? Because I think what I'm trying to say is, leading up to an apology, is a lot of people will walk up to you with their tail between their legs thinking they did everything wrong. Like, you step on the tail of the dog and the dog turns around and goes, oh my gosh, are you okay? I shouldn't have ever done that. Dogs are just like constantly trying to win us over, and they never think that we're ever in the wrong. So somehow they must be in the wrong somehow. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I've never been in a dog's head, but the way they respond, sometimes it suggests that all the wrong is out there and not within ourselves. But we want to make sure that people understand, through the grace we give ourselves, we show the strength and the power of growth.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I said 4 steps, I meant 5. Because I forgot one, man. I forgot the middle step, which is the accountability. Mine is the journaling, the putting it out there, reflection, the accountability, the implementing, and the grace part of it. And accountability is really important in my household to not self-destruct on the self-defensiveness and oh, poor me, I'm just a horrible person. The shame aspect of it, because after I reflect and really narrow down where I think I've went wrong, I it's important to me to bring all the other people in my life in there and get their opinion on it too. And I'm always really pleasantly surprised with my kids, how awful I think I've done with them and how much grace they give me, and they just kind of shrug it off as, it's okay, I still love you. I think that we are a lot harder on ourselves as men and parents, than our kids are, at least at this stage. Maybe when they grow up and they start going through these existential crises in their 20s, they'll probably put a lot more blame on us. But at least this now in our household, where it's 9, 7, and 4, it's they do have a lot of grace, and that's important for my self forgiveness to hear that from them, and to see how it affected them, and to be open to what they would like to do better, or how they would like me to do better. And I think an apology and accountability is a really great way of humbling yourself and setting an even playing field, you know, because, like what we were saying earlier, it's so easy to like fall into a routine, and then you start fooling yourself, right? You're like, well, this works and this doesn't, so I'm always going to use this no matter what the circumstance is because I know it works. And then all of a sudden, like 3 months later, you're like, well, that thing ain't working anymore. Maybe I should pick and choose where it's successful and where it's not. But somehow I just got like caught into this overdrive, method of just like thinking that it works all the time. And the accountability for me is a really great way to like reset that playing field, to like, listen, I know I've been telling you that I had it right this whole time and that my way's better than yours, but I'm sorry about that. I was wrong about that. And I think that there's a lot of trust that happens in those moments with our kids, that we can say that, and say, you know what, I didn't have it all figured out. And I would really, really love to hear your opinion on how we can figure it
Mm.
out together. And I see the confidence that it builds in those conversations, and that
Hmm.
instilling of the confidence in my kids is ultimately what I'm trying to do as a parent, right? Is what I was trying to do the last 3 months in that routine that I had set myself up for and tricked myself into thinking that it was working, and this is a really good um point of reflection if that is, and what we can do
Hmm.
different. So that, yeah, that right there is one of the key pieces of, like I said, really humbling yourself and making us all really be in tune to humility.
Mm. Yeah. Let's go back and cover like the 6 steps to an effective apology. Something that I first heard back in 2016, Ohio State University study, and I fully stand by what they come up with. The 6 steps are an expression of regret. Explaining what went wrong is 2. 3 is take responsibility. 4 is declaring repentance. 5 is offer to make it up to them. And 6 is asking for forgiveness. Those 6 steps, when practiced to their fullest, really should be showing the person that you've wronged just how truly you want to make it right, and how you recognize, identify the areas that you did go wrong. So we talked earlier about understanding what your triggers are and journaling and stuff like that's the path to creating an effective apology. Because man, I buddy and listeners, I did not grow up in an environment where repentance and asking forgiveness was the norm. Instead, it was, I'm gonna sit with where I'm at, what I did, and I'm gonna continue to defend that position. And it's what it is it's just a statement of saying, I'm gonna fight you to the death on this one. I'm never gonna in any way suggest that I had any part in doing the wrong in this argument, this fight, whatever. I'm going to stand by where I was then, and I'm standing where I am now. That's unfortunately never going to result in that relationship coming to a better place. In fact, that will just unfortunately degrade trust, and it will create distance. And if you're in a marriage, don't expect that to last, at least not with happiness attached to it. So yes, expressing regret, like that's a big one. Like, I mean, again, it's really easy to say, oh, so stupid, and I just hurt others. Like, that's not actually what our loved ones who've been hurt by us want to hear. They don't want to hear that we're stupid and we make these mistakes. They want to hear that we regret the fact that we hurt them. And if you say in the process, I'm an idiot, that's not what they agree with. They're with you in this situation because they actually trust in you as a person. So when you make a misstep, let them know, I did make a misstep, and I'm sad. I'm sad that I did that. But don't just take it from there. Second step is explain what went wrong. Now you're saying, like, I have an understanding of this situation where it went out of hand, and this was my part in it. Step 3, taking responsibility. So now you're saying, like, not only here's my story of it, and I'm going to take the ownership over my part because this is how I saw things go wrong. So you're really kind of diving in deep, and they're thinking, man, this person's really really wanting to make something right here. They're probably already on board by step 3, but you don't want to stop there. You want to repent. You want to say, yeah, I'm deeply sorry for those things. And deeply sorry does not mean asking for forgiveness, which is why I love these 6 steps, because then you offer to make it up to them. You say, like, this is my understanding of maybe something I could do to help it get better, because trust being broken takes some time for repair. But if you identify all these things in the moment, you're on your path toward that trust being rebuilt. When you double down and you say, no, I was right, and here's all the reasons, you're not going to find yourself getting a better relationship and finding trust in that. And then finally, of course, there's that ask for forgiveness. After you've laid all this out and you say, I'm excited, or I'm just looking forward to making this right because I know that will bring us closer together, and I care about this more than I care about being right. Will you please forgive me? That person might still be like a little bit upset, but hopefully they do the same thing as you, and they walk, take a step away, and breathe, and maybe do some calming activity or something. And then they come to that realization, like, that person wants me, I want them. And that really felt great because they understand me and themselves in the process. Let's work on this. Otherwise, couples can break up, divorce, have an awful divorce. That where you want to head? Probably not.
Yeah, I think we've fooled ourselves into thinking that anger gives us power. And I was talking to my one of my kids the other day, and I said, "Why do you like using anger?" And she said, "Because it makes me feel in control. Because I get my way." AKA, she feels powerful, right? And my point of reset has really been concentrated on teaching her and myself that anger is not power. That I think really what is powerful is what we're talking about here: forgiveness and accountability. Um, because I think that you can get a lot further in life with putting honey out there than vinegar, and there's a lot more power in the internal, with accountability and forgiveness, where anger makes you maybe feel like you're powerful over the external, but you've lost everything on the internal. And I'm trying to teach my kids and myself currently that power is not controlling the external, it's controlling the internal.
Hmm.
That's where real power is.
Hmm.
So that's
Anger
been my
is
challenge lately.
Yeah, anger is a sign that you've lost your ability to cope in the situation.
Anger is
So,
really an indication that you've lost all power and that
mhm.
you're desperate to feel like you have it.
Yeah, yeah, and trying to crash through the wall because you can't see a way around it is usually results in injury.
And a big mess.
Exactly. Yeah, so bringing that sincerity in the process, because again, going back to the idea of repair as opposed to destruction and pain, finding the ability to be sincere in your relationship, your love, and your willingness to work together, I think is key. Anger doesn't get you to sincerity, and I think that's kind of the big one is, yeah, you can feel in control. Usually is a lie you're telling yourself because people want to distance themselves from you in order to feel safe. And anger is a quick way to get to that distance.
It's really remarkable too when we exemplify these calm behaviors, how much it echoes through the rest of the house. You know, um, I was just telling you about that my wife is having these night terrors. We went through, the last few weeks of not much sleep and dealing with all this stuff. And it's brought in a lot of like trauma up for my wife in her past, having these night terrors and what they mean and why she's having them. So it's the tone in the house has been very delicate lately, as we try to like navigate this and really ask the right questions, in a curious way, um, and to help my wife through this, to help myself through it, and all of the things that kind of echo out through the households, on little sleep and screaming at 3 o'clock in the morning in fear, you know. Um, and that was kind of like that point, that turning point that was like, well, that reset button needs to be hit again, like let's think about that, what that looks like. Let's go through these 5 steps again, like something ain't right, and implementing that and seeing just like how much like calm has been resonating through the house over the last couple of weeks, because my wife and I stayed up real late one night just talking about all the things that we wanted to do different in our parenting techniques, in the next day. And it's really great. It's also really hard when you have a moment like that where it feels like it's all crashing in on you and like, oh, well, the foundation that we built isn't holding up the walls anymore. Like, we need to start over again, like, that can be very hard to like hear all at once and very overwhelming and traumatizing, but there's also like a relief to that too, of like, whew, wow, got that all out and just thought about all that, and now we can start fresh again. I don't recommend going that route. I really recommend like journaling, reflecting, and accountability, and
And
implementing
sleep.
and sleep. Yeah, exactly. But life doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes these reset moments hit us at 3 o'clock in the morning out of fearful screaming and trauma. And we have to be open to like resetting with that too. But you know, going into like planning on like, well, when we get this kind of response from the kids, or when we get this kind of displays of behavior, let's try this rather than the default mode. And I think like that step of implementing and planning and structuring is really important, to setting yourself up for less road bumps along the way. Like I said, I think a lot of us go into like, well, I want something new, but I haven't really thought about what that looks like in each moment. And for us to really go through and say, she's been saying this a lot lately. Next time she says that, let's try this, or let's plug into this, rather than saying no, but, or but you have to, or this is why, or whatever. And just like really surrendering to the present in those moments, I have just seen such a wonderful turnaround, with our kids' responses, with my ability to respond to those responses. So, you know, for me, that implementing and structuring phrase really like looks like trying to think of every scenario of like what could come up. Um, Again, not externally, but more internally. It's not more about like, well, when the kid makes a mess, I'm going to say this instead of that. It's more like, when I'm triggered by a mess, how are some different ways that I can handle it? What are some different techniques that I can choose? Rather than going into it with no plan and being like, well, I'm just going to yell and scream and be frustrated until it gets picked up. Now, I can think of, well, let's try doing it together. Let's try making it into a game or a contest. Whoever picks up the most Legos first gets this. Or, if you do this, then you would get this. Or just having a back pocket full of strategies to go into the next day is really takes the pressure off of
Hmm.
having to know it, or having to figure it out in the moment.
That sounds like mindfulness to me, especially when you said something back there that I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit more about is you said instead of doing the default mode. And I'm curious about that because the default mode, when you say it in that way, makes it sound like not the right approach. So default, but not the right approach. And then going into all those different, possibilities you mentioned, that sounded an awful lot like mindfulness, the inside work, your inner geography, what's the emotion, um, where in the body do you feel it, explore those sensations that you have within. How do you push away against this default mode, and how do you create a new default mode?
Well, like I said, the default mode for me is what I was saying earlier in this episode here. Of sometimes I think we get so used to like, well, this works. I'm going to keep doing this. This worked for when she said that, I said this, and it got me through it. So now all of a sudden we think, well, this is the fix all to all of it. It becomes the default. Every time, and she doesn't pick up her room, I'm going to say, well, if you don't pick up your room, I'm going to take the iPad away. That worked that one time, so I'm just going to keep on doing it. But
Hmm.
then all of a sudden we get locked into this default of negativity, of punishment, of consequence based motivation. And it doesn't work for every situation. It may work a time or two or needed to be implemented in a certain scenario, but somehow I've tricked myself into thinking that this consequential type of parenting was going to work all the time. And for resetting into a new default or undefault, would be to say, like, I'm going to have four strategies here. Let me try this, this, and this, and this. And, what does the opposite of consequential parenting look like? Well, okay,
Hmm.
I can interact in this moment. I can I can engage with them and help them clean, so it becomes a family bonding thing. But JJ, that can't be default mode, right? Because I don't want to clean their messy rooms every day, 4 times a day. So it may help me get through that one time, but it's not going to help me get through every time that the room needs to be cleaned, because I will just
Mhm.
lose it. So I have to think, look, what else can we implement? Maybe
Mhm.
we turn it into a game. Whoever picks up the most Legos wins dessert or a snack or a piece of candy. Or whoever can bring me the most books under your bed and organize them the right way, will get extra screen time. Or it becomes a more positive reinforcement based type of parenting. So, and I just seem to I need this reset button every so often, brother, because like
Mm.
my mind wants to trick me into thinking, well, this works, so this should be the default. This is always going to work. You've got parenting figured out. A+ for you. You figured out the secret sauce, but it's never that
Mm.
easy, brother. We always need to be open and curious about new techniques and new ways of doing it for when these new scenarios and new evolutions of growing up and parenting and what they look like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's flip it to the other side of things, because usually we talk about doing these walking away, these breathing exercises, all these things when
Which
we're
work,
when yeah,
not all
yeah.
the time.
When we're heightened though, when we're experiencing stress, what about when we how about when we journal when something went well? What about, and I'm not talking about like, well, we applied this last time, we'll apply it again this time, but like, giving that power again to the positive when something's going really really well, and we don't have to pay attention to one specific infraction, but instead pay attention to the situation as a whole. Let's take a mental picture, and now let's try and write down all of our thoughts, all of our observations about the situation. What's working here? And then you can really kind of go about, dare I suggest, the idea, probably a little bit of speculation on the part of others, in the situation, but start to create that picture, a story of that picture in your head, to then be able to identify why things are going well, and why it's important to identify the things leading up to a successful moment.
Yeah, that's why that's a good question, because it kind of rolls us into the last part of this my process, that grace, that forgiveness, and that checking in, because as I'm experimenting with new techniques and strategies, and some of them are working and some of them are not, I feel it's really important to be consistent about, like you said, bringing the other perspectives and experiences into that. Not just saying, well, Coley, that worked. Again, A+ for parenting. You figured out the secret juice. I really haven't, unless I can go back to my kids and go, so what did you think about that? And how did you feel? And that is what I think is really helping with the longevity of the calm in our house at this moment, is being able to like reflect, every day, like be willing to hit that reset button with the kids during every situation. Like, hey, there was no yelling today. How did that make you feel? What did you see that we did differently today? What did Coco do? That's what my kids called me, Coco. Instead of step, and which I like, man. I got a nice little, nickname instead of stepdad or papa or whatever, or Colton, which would feel weird. you know,
Coco,
I get
Coley,
Coco. Yeah.
CJ, Colton. Who are you?
Depends on the day, I guess. But
Depends on the moment and the
yeah.
emotional climate of the room.
Yeah. But when my kids, when we can have those talks and really, like, at the end of the day, say, hey, how did today play out differently for you? What did you notice? What do you think I noticed? What did I do differently? What did you do differently? And how can we carry this on till tomorrow? I think is like, that's the secret sauce to making, like I said, the longevity of this new routine and the calmness last longer. Now, is it going to be forever? No, because that's what we're talking about here. Is you got to be willingness to adapt and evolve, brother. So,
Hmm.
but I think the more consistently we can do this, not only are we able to, take in different experiences and perspectives, but I think we're also able to create a lot of trust and autonomy with our kids in the process of that as well.
Hmm. And I just want to add on to that too is I know I've heard it in myself, I've heard it in you, I've heard it with other people I've talked with that when things are going well, I hear ourselves not giving ourselves enough praise. So it'll be something like, "Yeah, you really did that well." "Yeah, but, and then you just completely deflate the praise given to you and the praise
Mm,
received.
mm, mm.
And that's one thing that I really would like to change about anybody's perspective. I know that I've suffered from that for so long where I don't give myself enough credit for what I did well. Instead, I think about the thing that's not even happening in this moment that I did previously to
Yeah,
try and
yeah.
take away from the possible growth and the learning that I did in this moment. Because I heard something recently, and I'm going to apply it in a different way here, but I think it matters. Um, the example that I heard was when you go through a breakup, you're broken. No, that situation broke. You are not a broken person. You are capable. That situation that you experienced was the broken part that broke. So being able to rid yourself of the shame and give yourself the positive power that does exist within and taking a goddamn compliment because it actually is legit and being proud of that I think is important. I had a question asked of me on a like basically a survey recently, and it said, uh, how can you be your best self or something like that. And I said, I am living. Oh no, how can you live your best life? And I said, I am living my best life. I'm not perfect, and there's plenty of things that I could be doing better. Right now, I'm living my best life, and I'm going to continue to pursue something greater for myself and for the people that I love. And that's not, again, not a boastful thing, but a recognition of the work that I put in every day and the great life that I envision on a regular basis. You're always going to have to work. You're always going to experience adversity, but you don't need to let the adversity tell you that no, adversity is you. Instead, I'm dealing with adversity because I have been through all these things in my life and I continue to strive for something great. I'm not the broken part. I experienced some brokenness.
What this makes me think of is probably gonna say the pronunciation wrong. Kintsugi. Have you ever heard of that? It's these.
I think I think you just talked about like spitting something out of your mouth, a loogie.
It's these Japanese bowls that when they're like made out of porcelain or ceramic, and when they break, they don't discard the bowl. They take gold and they meld it back together, and it becomes this one beautiful ceramic bowl. Is now it kind of I think has more beauty to it and uniqueness to it because it's fallen, it's broken into several pieces, and they use this gold lacquer to glue it back together. So it becomes something new and different and takes on a different beauty. And that's what's just making me think of this because we all have the power to break things, right? Like, but we also have this power to fix them and to protect them. And we won't always be protectors and we won't always be fixers, and but that also means we won't always be breakers. We won't always be broken. And I think that there is a lot of beauty that can come from putting something back together with care and curiosity and attentiveness. So I Kintsugi, Kintsugi. I know I don't know I don't speak Japanese, but that concept and that form of art and culture has really always spoke to me and makes me reflect on that as you speak about this now. So just had to throw that out there. Random thoughts of an ADHD dad.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a difference between saying, like if somebody says to you like, "Oh, you think you're living your best life, you're just fooling yourself." You think of everything as sunshine and rainbows. Well, is that their problem or is that is that the person who's suggesting the cynicism in that statement? Is it that it's their problem, not the person who they're trying to suggest has a problem by not seeing, oh, the brown grass and not the green grass or something like that. There's still brown grass, there's still dying things and stuff. I mean, granted, you wouldn't say like, yeah, Jimmy, he loves to crash into other cars. That makes him happy. Let him live his best life. Granted, that's not, I think most people are well aware of what's right and what's wrong. But when you found yourself on a path of happiness, let's say you like to work at Wendy's, behind the counter, and that actually brings you joy. You get to deliver people's food and you get to see smiles, whatever it is. I don't know if that's somehow where you find your path carved into happiness. Like, who's to say that's wrong?
Yeah. Well, great talk, brother. I'm going to include my 5 steps into the show notes here, and I want to put your 6 steps to an apology in there as well for our listeners. So if you weren't writing down all of the gold that we're spitting out here, don't worry, guys. I'll put it up there for you. So, but, to end this, I just want to say that I don't think, well, sometimes it is too late. Which is, I guess, even more important why we are able to reflect and implement and be accountable and have forgiveness for ourselves during these processes. Because the more that we ignore it, I think the deeper the hole gets, and it gets harder to get out of. But the more that we are open to hitting this reset button and thinking of a new way. Oh, look at that. Just as we're ending the episode, little man comes in ready to start making trouble.
There he is. Giggling his way up into your lap.
You want to say the outro today, Bubba? Can you say, thanks for listening to the ADHDads? Say it. Don't get shy now. You came in here. Well, guys, thanks for listening to another episode of the ADHDads. I'm CJ.
I'm JJ.
Say I'm Caden. And this is Caden. Hope to hear you next time, guys. Hope you got a lot out of today's episode, and hope you tune in next week. All right, we'll see you next time.